too. Hey, Josh, you're back just in time. I just set up
Julianna.
the next story. Oh, hi. I understand your Wi-Fi crashed, eh?
Yeah, it's a miracle of modern technology. I'm having some issues here. Yes, I got it back up. I'm sorry about that.
We've got issues. The name of your podcast, I do encourage everybody to get it.
We've got tech issues this week, yeah.
I was just talking about, so I set up the story that we had discussed a little bit earlier about what we were going to talk about, and it does kind of fit in with what we were talking about the Starbucks workers unionizing. So the economy, Biden and the Congress basically are presiding over what is being reported as the strongest 2-year performance on growth and jobs in decades. The jobs market is apparently just booming, but how does that square with the fact that, like people with college educations are working in jobs where, they're underutilized, like at Starbucks, for example? I mean, to me, I think they're organizing because they know about organizing from their 101 classes at university. You know what I mean? So they're like, hey, why don't we get on this? You're frozen again. This is going to be a disaster. I'm going to have to just guess at what you were saying. I know Josh is having a hard time with his internet, so we'll give it another try. But anyway, those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? You can put them in the stream and we'll go from there. But
this is really frustrating. I don't know what's happening.
That's okay. We'll just try.
I'm sorry about that. Listen, if we're talking about why the economy is booming and the Democrats are getting no credit for it, I mean, that's fundamentally a messaging problem, I think. Unemployment claims have fallen to the lowest point since 1969. I mean, that's remarkable. The unemployment rate was not supposed to recover in the labor market was not supposed to recover in terms of unemployment coming down to pre-pandemic levels until 2025, and we've shot right past that. Part of it is the media's obsession, almost unnatural obsession with inflation. I think that that's filtered down to a lot of people. But part of it is that, and I think that we can kind of trace all sorts of political ills to this. There's such a massive asymmetry in terms of the Democrats' ability to get out a message and stay on message. So you have Fox News and this kind of sprawling conservative propaganda apparatus constantly telling people that things are bad, and there isn't a concerted effort to push back on that. So, that this is only one example of many where I think that that's really the heart of it.
What do you make of the fact that everyone's talking about, these unemployment claims are down, but so many people are supporting their families after having a higher education and working in jobs that don't require a higher education?
Well, look, the thing is that we talk about the economy as if it's a homogenous blob, and it isn't that way. Even if you look at something like, I just mentioned inflation, what we're seeing right now is that people at the bottom of the income ladder are seeing their wages increase dramatically, significantly faster than inflation. People at the top are also seeing really significant gains, and people in the middle are not.
Yeah.
So although that's I have to say that breaks.
I worked hard to get into the middle.
I mean but that does break a pattern that we've seen for a long time, where it was the lower end of the labor market that was just continually getting screwed. Mm-hmm. And it's that group that I think disproportionately is organizing. They're quitting. There's a social revolution going on, and it's not just about money. It's about, dignity and, expectations that they be treated like human beings. Mm-hmm. So there's a big shift going on in our economy. I don't know where it's going to end up. It needs to be supported by better labor law if it's going to endure, but we are seeing some very interesting changes at present. That wasn't quite an answer to your question, but I kind of went tangentially.
I really love the way you can get kicked off Wi-Fi twice and come back swinging with a great answer. You know what I mean? This is
I'm a pro. I'm a
this
pro.
is Josh Holland we're talking
I'm a
about.
pro. I've been doing
All right,
this for a
moving on to
while.
our next story. I want to talk a little bit about the Remain in Mexico business. Giancarlo, put up that image of Trump. This is how CNN, there we go. Let's get that on there. So this is how CNN reported what's going on because, oh, geez, my eyeballs are barely working here. But so they're reporting about the Remain in Mexico policy having to stay. And they're basically, I keep hearing over and over, the Biden administration is restarting the Trump era border program. No, just that first line is completely inaccurate. There's a court order that a conservative judge put into place that keeps Trump's policy in order. Why again, the messaging? I cannot, it just is so disappointing to me and disheartening that Democrats aren't out there screaming from the rooftops and getting these headlines changed and pushing back. I mean, Biden didn't want to do this. He's trying to educate, he's trying to make it better by giving them, more than tents to sleep in, putting security up. But it's not his fault. It's not like he said, okay, this is my policy. What do you make of this?
Democrats think that the media is going to fairly portray what's going on, the legacy media, and I don't know why. I don't know why they still do. I want to make a point here. You said it was a conservative judge. The judge who ruled on this, first of all, it was two states. I think it was Missouri and Texas. They sued right at the beginning of the Biden administration. They said, we're not going to do this anymore. Or this policy where you had to stay in Mexico to apply for asylum. Remember, these are not migrants. These are not economic migrants. These are people who are seeking asylum. They said, we're not going to do this policy anymore. The first month, the first week that Biden was in office. So Missouri and Texas sued. They had several claims in their lawsuit. Among them was that this was going to cause more people to be released into their states, which would increase policing costs, blah, blah, blah. The argument was enough to convince a Trump appointee. This guy was appointed by Trump as a 42-year-old. So he'll be on the federal bench for another 25 years. And so he ordered that this policy be reinstated. Now, let me just say that there is legitimate criticism of the Biden administration in that they expanded the policy somewhat. The original Trump policy only covered Spanish-speaking people and people from Brazil. They expanded that policy to cover people from everywhere in the Western Hemisphere, including Haiti. So there is some reason to criticize them on that basis.
Do Haitians try to come in through Mexico?
Yes, yeah. There's been a big surge of Haitians seeking asylum coming up through Mexico after the assassination of the Haitian president. There was a series of natural disasters there, et cetera, et cetera. And Haiti is in the grips of gang violence, just as are El Salvador and Nicaragua and Guatemala, which is the three countries that are sending most of these asylum seekers to our border.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, no, it's a complete mess, and it's a bipartisan mess. And I talked about it a little. This other related issue on my podcast this week. There's 4,000 National Guards troops along the southern border that were sent there by Republican governors from 20 different states. They've also sent like state troopers and maybe like food inspectors, I don't know, to sit there as props, to serve as political props in their propaganda campaign against the Biden administration. And these 4,000 troops, they're legally restricted from doing much except observing, and in some limited capacity they can support border patrol. This is already a heavily militarized border. So they're being separated from their families. They're sitting in these remote outposts in the middle of nowhere. They have nothing to do. And there's all sorts of problems with drugs, with alcohol abuse. They've gotten into 3 times as many car accidents vehicular accidents as they have assisted with drug interdiction. So,
and yet those states aren't suing to get rid of those people. Because,
no, and it's not even a story. We talk about the press. If the situation were reversed and Democrats were using 4,000 troops as a political prop, and these troops were miserable and having all sorts of problems, this would be a massive, massive story on Fox News every day. They would be getting hammered for it, and you barely even. I read about this in the Army Times.
It would eclipse the burning of the Fox Christmas tree as the top story.
Christmas apocalypse. The burning Christmas tree.
I like
apocalypse. Just put apocalypse on the back of that one. It's that big. It's that big of it. It's a genocide basically against.
Obviously,
if you watch Fox and Friends, it is a pogrom against.
They said it was a hate crime.
Christmas tree Americans.
If you hadn't heard the story, I wasn't going to cover it, and I don't have a picture of the burning tree.
Is it even a story? It's not even a story.
It's not even a story.
Yeah.
A homeless person or
homeless guy.
Set a tree on fire in New York City, and it was the Fox News Christmas tree, which gotta say, maybe he's not so crazy. Anyway,
his father says he
doesn't like
nuts.
being homeless, and he thinks that Fox is not helpful to the unhoused in this country. I don't know.
Look, the guy obviously has mental health issues. He said that it was lit on fire by mothers who want to rape their children. So, and he had also, I think, exposed himself outside the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, something like that.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not necessarily a war on Christians. Just guy has a lot of problems. Well,
all right. Our next stories are the following stories that actually, these are what I would consider possibly good news stories. I'd love to have your take on
stories.
Them. And this is the funny part. You don't usually get good news stories out of Democracy Now!, but this is where I got the most depressing.
I think my show is the most depressing, honestly.
No.
We cover a lot of like assault on democracy stuff. So
well, that is depressing.
It's depressing as shit, honestly.
Okay, but here's a couple of things that I heard. So President Biden ordered that federal vehicles and buildings start transitioning to renewable energy. The goal, which of course isn't going to fix all of climate change. Of course, that's what everyone's going to bitch about, but the goal is reaching carbon neutrality by 2050. The executive order affects 300,000 buildings and 600,000 cars and trucks. I mean, it's a step, right?
Yeah. People, there's a million things going on at all times in the sprawling federal bureaucracy that get no attention. And it's remarkable, when during the Trump presidency, I had a weekly column covering things that nobody paid attention to. And it was always like agency level stuff. And there was this recurring theme where the Trump administration, they would be like, okay, we're going to deregulate this terrible pollutant. And then the industry would be like, we don't want that deregulated. We did not ask you for this. You're going beyond what even we lobbied you for. This was a consistent theme. So now we have a new administration. We have thousands of new people at the agency level heading these agencies, and a different prioritization entirely. The elections matter. Elections have consequences.
Well, actually, these next two little pieces of news are right along that line. The Senate voted to confirm Jessica Rosenworcel as the chair of the FCC. She will be the first woman to serve as the permanent chair of the agency. And she's actually great. She was a fierce critic of the repeal of net neutrality protections. I don't know what she's going to be able to do on that, but most digital rights activists are happy with this appointment.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I know. So that's good. And then Jonathan Cantor, he's an anti-monopoly expert. Do you know this guy? He was confirmed to head the Justice Department's antitrust division. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, there's a really antitrust was an area that was neglected by both parties for decades. And there is an emerging just in the last few years. And this is partially embraced by some intellectuals on the right, partially because of their conspiracy theories about all of these large institutions, social media companies being biased against them, which is nonsense. But it has spurred a renewed interest in antitrust law, and it's good for progressives. Antitrust is good for progressives.
That is very good.
Yes.
The Senate also unanimously confirmed Chuck Sams the third in November, the first ever Native American National Park Service director. I don't know Mr. Sams's positions on things, but I'm just going to make a general assumption that he's not going to want to like plow down the butterfly reserve to put up a wall like Trump's guy wanted to do. Yeah.
I heard that. So that butterfly preserve right on the border has been getting so much problems. It's become this lightning rod for right-wing extremists. They've been cutting holes in their fences. It's a crazy story. Really? Butterfly preserve down in Texas. Thrust into the national spotlight, butterfly reserve.
Let the butterflies.
Just let them be. Let the butterflies be.
And in our final story, I actually pulled this directly from your Twitter feed because I find your Twitter feed very interesting. Okay. You wrote, let's just put up the image, Giancarlo. We've got this image.
Are we doing this with a tweet?
Yeah, we're doing this from this is from Axios. Apparently, there was some sort of study that showed that nearly a quarter of college students wouldn't be friends with someone who voted for the other presidential candidate, with Democrats far more likely to dismiss people than Republicans. That's according to Generation Lab Axios polling. Why does this matter? It says partisan divide.
They should stop right there. Why does this matter?
Exactly.
Why does it matter? Who cares?
I don't know. All right. It says
this is a study of young people, though, first of all, right?
Yeah. It said that 71%, this was the highlighted portion you'll see here. 71% of Democrats wouldn't go on a date with someone with opposing views versus 31% of Republicans. Tell me your thoughts about this, Josh.
Yeah. So I have a few thoughts on this. First of all, I'm surprised that 29% of young people would go on a date with somebody who is
29% are watching Kim Kardashian's Twitter feed. They don't even know what the hell's going on. Anyway.
I mean, we're talking about, would you go on a date with somebody who is probably opposed to abortion rights, who may be a QAnon person, who is an anti-vaxxer, probably, who is belligerent about masks, who believes conspiracy theories about Antifa and thinks it was okay to storm the Capitol, who opposes the Black Lives Matter movement? I'm surprised it's 29%. The other thing about this poll is that I don't believe its findings at all. There was another finding is they asked, would you be friends with somebody who from the opposite party? Only 5% of Republicans said that they would have problems being friends with a Democrat. And if you look at the conservative media and their constant demonization of Democrats, like the most horrific people in the world, I have a very hard time believing that. No.
That's actually really
I don't buy it at all.
That's really very interesting. That's interesting. So I don't know about this. I find that the Christian-y types on the right feel like they have to be friends with you, even though they're being the hate is being drummed up. I don't think they're going out to any Democratic, town council meetings to make new friends. But if you're already friends with the person, it seems like, I don't know. It's hard to know. I mean, young people still meet people by playing on the same rugby team, and where you don't bring up politics until later, that you find that the reason that person is so strong and buff is because they're building a shelter to live out the end times in their backyard. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the other point that I would make about this poll is, so it's a poll of young people again, and young people skew broadly to the left, and the college Republicans, the college Republicans are really wingnuts and trolly wingnuts and kind of belligerent about it. Again, it seems like 29% It's higher than it should be. Like I wouldn't. I'm single. I would not date somebody whose values are so antithetical to my own.
That's because we're older and we're done. You have to fit into this tiny slice of acceptability.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
not be
I mean,
annoying at
honestly, also with young people, like you might just hit it. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. What does
When you're
dating exactly
in
mean?
college, like whatever.
Well, with that, Josh Holland, host of We've Got Issues, coming on the show. This is probably our last progressive news headlines for the year.
For the year, yeah.
I do thank you for being a part of this program. I love
No,
having
it's
you
been
on.
so much fun. It's been so much fun. I'm going to work on the lighting next time a little.
Yeah. No, I like this bunker look.
Yeah, I've got a bunker thing going on. It's not my I'm going to work on the background. That's going to be my New Year's resolution. I'm going to work. You have a lovely background, by the way, Julianna.
Thank you. This is my brand new background.
Yeah.
Actually, hold on. Let's back it off. Okay. I'm going to give you and the viewers an opportunity to see.
Oh, yeah. That's lovely.
Cat statue.
Yeah. So Room Raider should really do your background there. That's a 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope so.
10 out of 10.
All right, Josh. Thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate it. And I will see you in the new year.
Thanks, Julianna.